مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين، محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. مولاي صل وسلم.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأهل بيت الطاهرة أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. By the grace of Allah, we continue with our series of lectures on certain surahs of the Quran. We started with Surat Al-Fatah, and then we moved on to Surat Ar-Rahman. And this week, inshallah, we will talk about the surah which succeeds Surat Ar-Rahman. It is chapter 56 of the Quran, and it is Surat Al-Waqi'ah. Many of you will be familiar with this surah. It is often recited, particularly because one narration suggests that this leads to an increase in the person's rizq, that they will be protected from any shortage of rizq if they are in the habit of reciting this surah at night. And so this is one of the barakat which is mentioned in the hadith about this surah of the Quran. Also, it follows Surah Ar-Rahman, and it deals with similar subject matter, in the sense that there is a great deal in this surah regarding the Day of Judgment. That is the whole topic of the surah, and the realities of the afterlife. And in particular, many of the blessings of Jannah are enumerated in this surah, just as they are in Surah Ar-Rahman. So it's very harmonious. It pairs very well with Surah Ar-Rahman. It fits very nicely into its sequence in the Quran after Surah Ar-Rahman. However, there are some differences in this surah compared to the previous one. In Surah Ar-Rahman, there is a great emphasis on God as the beneficent Lord, God as the benefactor, and in keeping with the title of the surah, Ar-Rahman. Whereas in this surah, there is more about the inevitability of the Day of Judgment, and is a more balanced picture of the Day of Judgment. So just as blessings are enumerated in Jannah, also the punishment of the hellfire is also specified in this surah in much more detail than it is in Surah Ar-Rahman. So it's a more balanced exposition of the realities of the afterlife. And the emphasis here, in keeping with the first verse of this surah, is on the inevitability of the Day of Judgment. Al-Waqi'ah. Al-Waqi'ah, the thing that will surely, inevitably come to pass, i.e. the Day of Judgment will come about, and the realities of the Day of Judgment will come about. And this is because the Meccan audience, and overwhelmingly the commentators agree that this is a Meccan surah, the Meccan audience, the main issue that they had was not their belief in God, because they believed in God, they believed in the notion of God, although they associated partners with God. But their main point of belief on which they had issues was the reality of the Day of Judgment. They had trouble believing in resurrection. So they considered that this was the life, and that they were destined to have a certain social status and to live out their life, and that they wouldn't be held accountable for what they did on this earth. And they felt that they had that sense of entitlement to enjoy their time on this earth without accountability, without worrying about oppression of others, and without worrying about worshipping gods other than Allah. So in this surah, as I said, there's a more balanced exposition of the Day of Judgment, but also there is a specific focus at the end of the surah on the moment of death. So it isn't just about the afterlife. There is also a section at the end which deals with the moment of death. So the time frame is rewound back a little bit from the Day of Judgment, whereas in Surah Ar-Rahman we saw that much of the surah was about the gifts that Allah bestows in this world, and then the Day of Judgment. So Surah Al-Waqiah adds to that a focus on the moment of death itself, and we'll see why it does that and how it does that. But this is all part of the Quranic argument, and we'll see how that unfolds in more detail as we move through the talk. Now, Stylistically, in this surah, again, we do encounter the enumeration of God's favors to inspire love and to motivate people into believing in God and to praising God. And this is the notion of targhib, which we mentioned in Surah Ar-Rahman. But we also see that combined here, interspersed with some very penetrating questions, which demand thought and reflection from the audience. And so this enumeration of favors is punctuated regularly with high occurrence of questions which are interactive and which are challenging and which demand thought and reflection in this surah, and we'll highlight those as we go through. So first of all, the surah is divided into a number of sections, and I will highlight those as we go through. And the first of those sections is verses 1 to 6. And the subject matter changes as we go through the surah, and I'll highlight that. So in verses 1 to 6, we see that Surat Al-Waqi'ah is specifying the description of the Day of Judgment. So first of all, the thing which is striking is the use of this term Waqi'ah, Al-Waqi'ah, the inevitable, the thing that will come to pass, the thing that will descend upon you as you are going about your normal life. إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ. Now, in these first two verses, the notion of this root waqa'a, to fall, to descend upon you, is repeated 3 times. And this is a Quranic habit that key concepts are often repeated in the eloquent form that we are used to hearing, location, 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 or education, education, education. In the same way, the Quran often repeats points which are emphasized 3 times. So here we have إِذَا وَقَعَتِ, so we have the verb waqa'a. Al-Waqi'ah, so we have a noun Al-Waqi'ah, and then لَيْسَ لِوَقَعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ. So we have these 3 repetitions of the root waqa'a. And this obviously adds layers of emphasis to the inevitability of this event, which will surely come to pass. And we see that the Day of Judgment is referred to as Al-Qari'ah and Al-Qiyamah, Al-Ghashiyah, etc. But here, by calling it Al-Waqi'ah, the thing which is emphasized is not only its horrifying nature, as is highlighted by some of the other terms, but its inevitability. This is the key argument here, that this will surely come to pass. إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةُ. إِذَا, the first word of the surah, is a kind of a time transporter. It says when, it means when. But in the Quran, these simple terms like إِذَا do far more than just saying when. It's not a throwaway word. إِذَا serves as a time transporter. It takes you into a future time, and then you are prepared for an exposition of the realities of that Day of Judgment. It takes you to a moment in time and says, look at this reality. Look at this future reality. It's going to unfold, and here are the details. Let me bring it to life for you, and then let me bring you back into the present and give you a chance to change your behavior now. Because the Quran is guidance. The whole purpose of this is to change the way people behave now. So, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةُ لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ. There will be none to deny it. Today, because it hasn't come to pass, people deny the Day of Judgment. The Meccans used to deny the Day of Judgment. But the Quran is saying, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةُ, when this inevitable event comes to pass, لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ. There will be no possibility of denial at that time. The realities will unfold before you. And then he starts to unfold now the qualities of that Day of Judgment. What will be the consequences of it? What will change? He says, خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. These 2 adjectives, خَافِضَةٌ, رَافِعَةٌ, they follow the same wazn, the same pattern, and they sit side by side. It's a very short verse, and it makes you focus on each of these 2. They're just 2 words, خَافِضَةٌ, رَافِعَةٌ. These are 2 qualities of the Day of Judgment. What does it do? Some people, it brings them low, and some people, it elevates them. خَافِضَةٌ, it brings them low. رَافِعَةٌ, it elevates them. So Allah is saying here that there will be upheaval on the Day of Judgment. We'll see that in the verses now which follow after this. There will be upheaval. Things will be turned upside down. The world will be destroyed as you know it. And its effect will be of that Day of Judgment, خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. People's fortunes will be reversed. There will be some people who used to scoff at in this world. You would mock them. You consider them poor. You consider them uninfluential. They will be elevated. Others are at the top echelons of society. They control the instruments of power. They have the budgets are in their control. And the Quraysh were very powerful people. And people like Abu Lahab, very wealthy. So all these people had power, they had wealth at their disposal. They will be lowered. So your social status in this world will not affect your seniority on the Day of Judgment. And we'll see the surah is all about people's fortunes on that day, how they will be mapped out, how they will be classified. So they won't be the situations that you are used to in this world. The status there will not be the same as what you are used to in this world. خَافِضَةُ رَافِعَةٌ. Fortunes will be changed. Fortunes will be reversed. And then the sheer destructive power of the Day of Judgment is highlighted in the ensuing verses. And verse 4 he says, إِذَا رُجَّتِ الْأَرْضُ رَجًّا وَبُسَّتِ الْجِبَالُ بَسًّا فَكَانَتْ هَبَاءً مُنْبَثًّا. So here, this root, رُجَّ, رُجَّتِ الْأَرْضُ رَجًّا بُسَّتِ الْجِبَالُ بَسًّا. This repetition, it's a maf'ul mutlaq construct in Arabic. This repetition gives you a sense of pounding, and the Quran uses this in other surahs of the Quran. إِذَا دُكَّتِ الْأَرْضُ دَكَّا دُكَّتِ الْأَرْضُ دَكَّا. So the repetition of the root gives you the sense of pounding, that the earth will be pounded and grounded into dust. It says إِذَا رُجَّتِ الْأَرْضُ رَجًّا, when it will be shaken with a very powerful shaking. وَبُسَّتِ الْجِبَالُ بَسًّا, and it will be crumbled into pieces. It will be pounded and kneaded like dough, will be kneaded and ground to dust. وَبُسَّتِ الْجِبَالُ بَسًّا فَكَانَتْ هَبَاءً مُنْبَثًّا. Now, haba'an is like dust, and the commentators say it is like when sometimes the light shines and you see grains of dust in the air floating, and the light catches them and you see these grains of dust. So it's فَكَانَتْ هَبَاءً مُنْبَثًّا, and they will be scattered. So you think about the mountains, al-jibal, they are a symbol of permanence and stability in this world. They are heavy, they are strong, they are powerful, and they are the things which stabilize the earth. They are very iconic in terms of their embodiment of stability and security and strength. Even they. So here the Quran is using an a40 argument. If they are pounded like this, imagine what will happen to everything else. Anything which is lesser in strength, of course it will be destroyed. Even the mountains. Even the mountains. فَكَانَتْ هَبَاءً مُنْبَثًّا, they will be like specks of dust in the air. The sheer destruction of the Day of Judgment is being highlighted here. A sense of upheaval, a sense of the whole world as we know it being completely unwound. And this is a key theme in this surah, that God is the creator, God is the destroyer. God is the one who gives, God is the one who takes away. So here, in keeping with that, we see later on it talks about God as the creator of man and the one who gives death to man. Here, we have all of creation, the world as we know it, being destroyed. All of this is in God's power. And then, from verse 7 to 56, which is the longest section of this surah now, we move into a classification of the three different groups of people on the Day of Judgment, and their various fortunes are spelt out. In 3 verses, the categories are spelt out. First of all, so in verse 7, وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. So one of the consequences of the Day of Judgment, apart from its inevitability and its destruction, is that there will be separation, there will be classification, as on an examination day. During the course, everyone has the same experience, they attend the same lectures, they have the same lifestyle, they do whatever they wish to do, they have freedom. But on the Day of Judgment, on the examination day, then people are graded. After that, according to how they perform in the exam, some have first class, 2-1, 2-2, and so on. They are graded, they are separated. So how you perform during that period of time will affect how you are classified after the examination day. So here, وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. The Day of Judgment will separate you out into groups, 3 groups, ثَلَاثًا. And then verses 8 to 10 tell us who these groups are. So فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ. So first we have the people of the right, then we have the people of the left, and then in verse 10 we have وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ, the foremost. Right, the left, and the foremost. So in terms of the people who are successful, we have 2 groupings. the people of the right, and then the elite amongst them, the foremost, sabiqun. And amongst the people who fail on the Day of Judgment, we will just have the people of the left. At this point, in this surah, we are not told about classifications, although in other surahs we are told that the hypocrites, for example, will have the lowest level in hell and so on and so forth. But here, the purpose is to single out the foremost, and to show that they are the elite. Otherwise, we have the people of the right and the left. And one of the purposes of calling them the people of the right and the left is it alludes to the fact that they will be given their book of deeds in their right hand or their left hand. So this is a classification based on which hand they will be given their book of deeds in. And then there are other interpretations, such as the people of the right may be seated on the right of the throne of Allah, for example. So there are other reasons for this as well. Now here we see the ma of ta'ajjub here, of wonder, amazement being used. فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ. And this is a construct which is used in Arabic to indicate ta'ajjub, to indicate wonder and amazement. So, فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ. How incredible, how wonderful how successful are the أصحاب الْمَيْمَنَةِ, the people of the right. وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ. The same term, the same ma is used here to wonder, but this time at their wretchedness, at their failure, and their situation, their plight on the Day of Judgment. And this is interesting because sometimes after ma, we get an adjective, such as ma ahla, ma ajmal, ma akmal, to indicate how beautiful, how complete, for example, something is. But here we don't have an adjective. The Quran simply says, ma, wonder at them. What should we wonder at? That is inferred from context. You will find out what their situation will be as the surah unfolds. From that you should infer what form of wonder you should be engaged in. You will either marvel at their success, or you will be astounded at their plight, horrified at their plight. That the Quran simply says ma. And so the Quran has this style that is very concise, and it is called hadf, that it omits things which do not need to be said. And this makes them rhetorically more effective. It leaves it to your imagination, for you to infer from context. That gives it both concision and effectiveness as well. فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ. And the order is very interesting here. We start off with the right. So we don't start off with the people of hell. We start off with the people of Jannah. But yet, we end with as-sabiqun, as-sabiqun. So the foremost are at the end of this classification. And this is a point of focus. It makes them elevated and unique and distinguished. But it also allows that to lead on to the description of the three categories, beginning with as-sabiqun. So in the descriptions, which are lengthy and which follow in the three sections that follow here, in subsections I should say, there the sabiqun are dealt with first. So although they are listed last in the classification, they are actually dealt with first in the full descriptions of who those people are, without any break in the order. So we have فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ, the people of the right, وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشَمَةِ, people of the left, وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ, the foremost, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ, they are the closest to Allah, مُقَرَّبُونَ, قُرْب, they have the proximity to Allah, most proximity to Allah. And then the description of their situation begins this section of the surah. A couple of other things to point out here is that verses 8 and 9, أصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة أصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة. These verses are almost identically repeated later on in the surah as well. So we have in verse 27, وَأَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ. And we have at verse 41, وَأَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ. So the same verse is almost repeated with a slight variation in the terminology there of Maymana versus Ashab al-Yamin. We have the repetition of that verse, and it acts as a connector to take you from the initial classification into the lengthier exposition of what that classification entails, what being in that category entails in terms of consequences on the Day of Judgment. So that provides a cohesion between the early classification and the later descriptions. Now, interestingly, in verse 10, وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ doesn't have ma at-ta'jubiyya here. There's no ma of wonder here, as if to say that there's no need for it. The fact that as-sabiqun, the ones who have preceded the foremost, it speaks for itself. There's no need for ta'ajjub here. وَالسَّابِقُونَ as-sabiqun. That's all you need to know. They are the first and the foremost. And then we are told in more detail, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ, they are given another title. Rather than simply wondering at their position, we are told to we are given them another title that describes them. أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. And then we go on to we go on to see what their situation is. فِي جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ, in the gardens of blessings. ثُلَّةٌ مِنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَقَلِيلٌ مِنَ الْآخِرِينَ. There will be more of them will be from the earlier people and less of them as time goes on. And one of the interpretations of this is that in the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said that the best generation will be my generation, then the generation which follows them, and then the generation which follows them. So we have the Sahaba Kiram, and we know that no one in the ummah can attain their rank. Then we have the Tabi'een, then we have the Tabi'een. And so one interpretation is that more of the people from these earlier generations will be amongst the Muqarrabeen. And we see that in the Quran, that the Quran says that none of the people who follow later, even amongst the companions, can attain, for example, the status of the people of Badr. So the people who were early in their Iman, such as Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, those people, hardships which they endured, the favors which they did to support the use of their wealth, the endurance of persecution to allow Islam to survive and to be established, their effort was harder, and it was more instrumental in laying the foundations for the religion. So all the people who followed, who accepted Islam later, for example in Medina, they didn't endure what the people of Mecca endured. Equally, the people after Badr didn't endure what the people at Badr endured. Equally, the people who accepted Islam after Fatah Mecca, they didn't endure what the Medina Ansar endured. So as the generations went on, the hardships became less and less because Islam was more established. And then we are told about the situation of the people of Jannah. First of all, we have the Sabiqun as-Sabiqun. So there are many qualities of theirs I mentioned. Ala sururin mawduna. They will be on couches which are decorated. Muttaki'ina alayha mutaqabilin. They will be leaning on cushions and they will be facing each other. Yutufu alayhim wildanun mukhalladun. Surrounding them will be youths of perpetual beauty, who ever living perpetual beings. بِأَكْوَابٍ وَأَبَارِيقَ وَكَأْسٍ مِّن مَّعِينٍ. They will have serving vessels for them and glasses with a drink, with a refreshing drink. لَا يُصَدَّعُونَ عَنْهَا وَلَا يُنْزِفُونَ. But that quality of that drink will be that it won't cause any intoxication or any giddiness. There will be no detrimental quality of that drink, as we know in this world of wine or intoxication. وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِّمَّا يَتَخَيَّرُونَ. And whatever fruits they desire. وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِّمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ. The fruit, the meat of fowl, of birds, whatever they desire. وَحُورٌ إِينٌ. And houris with large eyes, كَأَمْثَالِ اللُّؤْلُؤِ الْمَكْنُونَ, as if they were well preserved pearls, جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. This is a reward for what they used to do. لَا يَسْمَعُونَ فِيهَا لَغْوًا وَلَا تَأْثِيمًا. They won't hear anything futile or sinful there, إِلَّا قِيلًا سَلَامًا سَلَامًا, except that they will always be hearing the greeting of salam, salam everywhere. So we see here that many of these rewards, what qualities do they highlight of the people in this Sabiqun? First of all, we see that they will be elevated and distinguished. They will be ala meaning they will be upon. So there's a sense of elevation here. And they will be decorated, they will be distinguished, they will be put on a pedestal. Sururin mawduna, decorated couches. Muttaki'ina alayha mutaqabilin. So they will be in comfort. Muttaki'in, they will be reclining, they will be leaning, they will have comfort here. And there will be service, they will be served. يَطُوفُ عَلَيْهِمْ وِلْدَانٌ مُخَلَّدٌ. So there will be people to serve them. So they will have service. And they will have hospitality. بِأَكْوَابٍ وَأَبَارِيقَ وَكَأْسٍ مِّن مَّعِينٍ. So they will be given drink and there will be goblets and serving vessels. So they will have a welcome, a hospitality here. Then the fact that they will have nothing detrimental will come in Jannah. لَا يُصَدَّعُونَ عَنْهَا وَلَا يُنْزِفُونَ. There will be nothing detrimental there. Everything there in Jannah will be beneficial. And their desires will be fulfilled. They will be satisfied. So the fruits will be يَتَخَيَّرُونَ, which they choose, and the meat of the fowl will be مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ, whatever they desire. So any desire, any choice will be fulfilled. So this will be part of the satisfaction of Jannah. And then we are told about their companions, حُورٌ إِينٌ كَأَمْثَالٍ. Ka, this ka is adat al-tashbih. it is an indicator of similitude, that they will be, the houris are like pearls. It means that they are preserved, they are enclosed, they are hidden, meaning that when you open the oyster, you see the pearl. Until then, it's something unseen, something only imagined. It enhances the feeling of their wonder, that it is a delight that the eye has never seen, beauty that the eye has never beholden before. They are preserved, they are untouched. So they are opened at that time. The oyster is opened, and inside the pearl is lustrous, and the pearl is beautiful, and it is shining. So it's an example, to a similitude, to give you the feeling of wonder and blessings unfolding. And then the sensory appeal there as well. What will they hear? لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما. Nothing sinful, nothing futile. They won't hear the kind of babble that people engage in on this earth. They will have إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما. They're always the greeting of peace, peace everywhere. Salam, salam, salam. So nothing to encroach upon their peace and their tranquility in Jannah. Everything will be harmonious. So all of this is jaza'an bima kanu ya'malun. Everything is a reward for what they used to do. So remember that all of these rewards are earned by action in this world. And this is, the Quran is asking for action. It is guidance. So this is a targhib here, motivation, that look, the people who try very hard in this world, they may endure hardships. Remember, those early Meccan believers, they were enduring torture, persecution, hardships, thirst, hunger, discomfort. They left behind their material possessions, in many cases, to do hijrah to Abyssinia, for example. Later they would do hijrah to Medina. But the Quran is saying, it's worth it. All of your work will be rewarded. In Jannah, you will have the reward for all this. You will have comforts, your desires will be fulfilled, you will be served, you will be distinguished and decorated. You will only hear salam, salam, peace and tranquility everywhere. Then we have the people of the right. وَأَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ, verse 27 says. Now here, in this section, we are told again, first of all, about the abundance in Jannah. So this time, some of the descriptions are similar and some are different. So this time we aren't told about them being served, and there isn't as much about choice here. But the similarities, we have a sense of abundance in terms of the gifts that they will be given. There's a sense of abundance. Lots of fruits will be put at their disposal. And then we are told about water again. So water, I mentioned before, it characterizes Jannah. It characterizes the giving of life, abundance, refreshment, and the gentle sound of its music as well. It's trickling as well, which is cooling and calming. And so we are told about abundant fruit. And then we are told also about them, again, having comfortable couches which are elevated. So we have elevation and comfort. And then again, we are told about them having companions. So looking now at the wording here, we have في سدر مخضود وطلح ممدود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب. A beautiful pattern there. You can hear مخضود ممدود ممدود مسكوب. And then وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة. So these words, مخضود, mandud, mamdud, maskoob, they indicate a sense of abundance. So in fi sidrin makhdud, we have trees which are free of thorns, and indicating that there is an abundance of fruit on those trees. Wa talhim mandud, so we have banana trees here which are in clusters. So we have the abundance of the sense of the banana tree, plantains, how they grow in clusters. Before in Surat Ar-Rahman we had the clusters of dates. Here we have the clusters of bananas. Mandud, so they're in clusters, so multiple growth. Wa dhillim mamdud, the dhil meaning shade, cooling shade, relaxing, sheltering you from heat. Mamdud meaning it stretches out. Mamdud. And as you recite here at the fasila here at the end of each verse, because again there will be a mud here. So we will say, في سدر مخضود وطلح ممدود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب. So you see, The mamdood, the stretching of the shadow, is actually also reflected acoustically in the stretching of the mad as we recite here. وَظِلٍّ مَمْدُودٍ. So the stretching of the shade, and then وَمَاءٍ مَسْكُوبٍ, and the water abundantly pouring down, maskoob, pouring water, cascading water, like a waterfall, cascades of water here. Not just a trickling stream here, but cascading water, مَاءٍ مَسْكُوبٍ. And then وَفَاكِهَةٍ, and fruits, كَثِيرًا. So there's a different form of abundance here, كَثِيرًا. All of this indicates lots and lots of abundance. لَا مَقْطُوعَةٍ وَلَا مَمْنُوعٍ. And just in case it's not completely clear, verse 33 says, there will be no end to this abundance, and there will be no prohibition in its accessing. لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوع, meaning it's unlimited and unprohibited. You can help yourself. And so all of this feeling of plentiful reward is compounded in these verses. وَفُرُشٍ مَرْفُوعَةٍ. Again, they will have couches, marfu'a, raised. So again, comfort and elevation here. إِنَّا أَنشَأْنَاهُنَّ إِنشَاءً. So again, they will be partnered there. فَجَعَلْنَاهُنَّ أَبْكَارًا أُرُبًا أَتْرَابًا لِأَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. So these partners will be chaste, they will be of equal age, and they will be affectionate. So they will be very suitable for them, very suited and very pure. لِأَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. All of this is for the people of the right. So again, the targhib here, encouraging people to do good actions, all of these blessings of the day of Jannah here. And as in Surat Ar-Rahman, the notion of a targhib is very strong here in these two subsections which spell out the blessings of Jannah for the sabiqun and the people of the right. Now after this, we have the people of the left. Now of the Ashabul Yameen, first of all, we are told ثُلَّةٌ مِنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَثُلَّةٌ مِنَ الْآخِرِينَ. So there will be a great many of them from the preceding generations and a great many from the succeeding generations. So this means that, number one, the people of Jannah will be numerous, and also that here the earning of this level of reward will be more equally balanced between the earlier people and the later people, meaning more of the later people who do good deeds will fall into this category, the Ashabul Yameen. This will be the default, the general state of the people of Jannah, if you like, leaving aside the elite, which were more of them were from the earlier generations who established Islam, the foundation of Islam, because their sacrifices were greater, their tests were greater as well, so they deserve a higher level of reward. So verse 41 then talks about the people of the left. وَأَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ. And the people of the left, how wretched are the people of the left? Again, we're implying wretched here. Ma. The Quran doesn't say ma anything, it just ma أَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ. So we have to imply from what follows how wretched their state is. And then he said, فِي سَمُومٍ وَحَمِيمٍ وَظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ لَا بَارِدٍ وَلَا كَرِيمٍ. So here, this time they will have scorching wind and boiling water. And they will have, rather than shade, they will have shadow of black smoke. We have the same word dhillin here in verse 43. We had dhillin in verse 30. But the addition of dhillin min yahmum indicates that this isn't going to be cool shade. This isn't dhillin mamdood. This isn't cool shade. This is dhillin min yahmum. This is choking. This is horrific. This is like when you are caught in a fire and the choking hot smoke comes and it's poisonous and it prevents you from breathing. This is horrific. وَظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ, suffocating. That's the word, suffocating. And then it's spelt out, لَا بَارِدٍ وَلَا كَرِيمٍ. لَا بَارِدٍ وَلَا كَرِيمٍ. Nothing cool and nothing pleasant. So meaning there will be water there and there will be shade there. But unlike the water of Jannah, just to spell out the contrast, and I mentioned before al-muqabala wal-muqarana. Al-muqabala meaning contrast, and muqarana meaning comparison. That the blessings of Jannah are always contrasted with the horrors of hell, because it exacerbates both, it enhances and accentuates both the qualities of each place. How different they are from the other accentuates the blessings of Jannah and the horrors of hell. So this time, although there will be wind and water, this and shade, this time la baridin wala kareem, nothing cooling about it, nothing ennobling about it, nothing generous about it in terms of its pleasant, being given pleasant gifts, nothing to enjoy here. Why all of this? إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين. These were Ironically, now here, in verse 45, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُتْرَفِينَ. These are people who used to be very well off. These are people who used to live in luxury. So here the Quran is highlighting the reversal of fortune here. That these people who are suffering in Jahannam, these are people who used to be well off. إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُتْرَفِينَ. There are people who were so self-satisfied, who were so lost in the luxuries of this world, that they felt free to associate partners with Allah, and they felt free to oppress others, thinking that they had somehow been blessed with social status and wealth in this world, and that they had a sense of entitlement, that it was their position to act with impunity, to act with superiority, to act with arrogance, and to tread on others. He says, look at their situation on the Day of Judgment. This khafidatul rafi'ah, this leveler, this one which abases some and elevates others. We saw the people of Jannah were elevated, ala sururin, and wa furushin marfu'a. There we had elevation. Here we have abasement, humiliation. La baridin wa la kareem. Nothing of welcome, nothing of ennoblement for them. Innahum kanu qabla dhalika mutrafin. These are people who used to live in luxury. Wa kanu yusirruna ala al-hinth al-azim. And they persisted in great sins. No matter how much they were told to be heedful, they persisted in their obstinate denial of the truth. وَكَانُوا يُصِرُّونَ عَلَى الْحِنْثِ الْعَظِيمِ وَكَانُوا يَقُولُونَ. And they used to say, أَإِذَا مِتْنَا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا أَإِنَّا لَمَبْعُوثُونَ. Are you saying that when we have died and we have turned to dust and bones, that we will be resurrected? We will be brought back? This is what they used to say. So the Quran records their incredulous statements, how they incredulously refuted the Day of Judgment, the Day of Resurrection, the fact that they would be reassembled and questioned. The Quran records puts on record the words that they used to use to deny the Day of Judgment, how incredulous they were. The Quran records it as a form of testimony against them, as if it is specified on the charge sheet against them. Their denial of the resurrection, and it contrasts with the reality of the Day of Judgment. So here, having portrayed the scene of the horrors of hell, then it contrasts that with their denial. So on the one hand, the realities of the Day of Judgment are being set out here at length, and then contrasting against that is their incredulity at the existence of resurrection at all. The two are being contrasted. And they used to say, "Inna lamab'uthun, will we be resurrected? Wa aba'una al-awwalun, and even our forefathers." The Quran says, "Qul," say, "Inna al-awwalina wal-akhirin lamajmu'una ila miqati yawmin ma'lum." Surely the first and the last, the ones who preceded and the ones who succeeded, the one who came after, lamajmu'un, all of them will be gathered, meaning different generations from different times will be gathered. Lamajmu'un. Time will become one. Earlier, later, all of them will be brought together. Just as in Jannah, we had ثُلَّةٌ مِنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَخَلِيلٌ مِنَ الْآخِرِينَ. So the generations are being brought together. Here, لَمَجْمُعُونَ. Yes, your forefathers will be brought as well. They will be gathered as well. You used to say, bring them in front of us. You will see them on the Day of Judgment. They will all be gathered. You will see the generations coming together. لَمَجْمُعُونَ إِلَى مِيقَاتِ يَوْمٍ مَعْلُومٍ. This is an appointed time. An appointed time, لِمِيقَات. They will all be gathered at this meeting point. And this is, we have tawqeed here. قُلْ إِنَّ. Inna is a particle of tawqeed, of emphasis. And lamajmu'un, lam of tawqeed again. This is tawqeed, emphasis. Grammatically, the Quran is using emphatic particles. And this is often used when you are refuting what somebody is saying. So because they were incredulous, inna lamab'uthun, are we really going to be resurrected? Our aba'una lawalun, and what? Even the people who have already died and gone into their graves, you're saying even they will be. So their incredulity is responded to by the Quran with tawqeed. Yes, very much so. قُلْ إِنَّ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ لَمَجْمُعُونَ إِلَى مِيقَاتِ يَوْمٍ مَعْلُومٍ. So the Quran uses tawqeed here to respond to their doubt, to dispel their doubts. And now the Quran uses a direct address. The Quran turns to these people. So again, we have different styles. Up to now, it has been talking about these people in the third person, that they used to say this. say this to them in response to the Prophet ﷺ. Say this to them in response. So the Quran is treating these people as if they're in the third person. And then suddenly, it starts talking to them. The Quran does this. It shifts for impact. So here, he starts to address them. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون فشاربون عليه من الحميم فشاربون شرب الهيم هذا نزلهم يوم الدين. It turns away again. Third person in that last verse. So verses 51 to 55, we have 5 verses which address them directly. So we have ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُونَ لَآكِلُونَ مِنْ شَجَرٍ مِنْ زَقُومٍ, and then it starts to turn away from them. So ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ, so then you, أَيُّهَا is a particle of address. أَيُّهَا الضَّالُونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ. The 2 qualities of that are highlighted of them is that they were astray, ضَالُون, and الْمُكَذِّبُونَ, they used to deny. It says لَآكِلُونَ مِنْ شَجَرٍ مِنْ زَقُومٍ. لَآكِلُونَ, you will eat. لَآكِلُونَ مِنْ شَجَرٍ مِنْ زَقُومٍ فَمَالِئُونَ مِنْهَا الْبُطُونَ, and then you will fill your bellies there. But how? Is it satisfying food? Nourishing food? No. فَشَارِبُونَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْحَمِيمِ, and then the drink will be of boiling water. فَشَارِبُونَ شُرْبَ الْهِيمِ, and you will drink like thirsty camels, meaning your thirst will not be requited. You will be drinking, but the thirst will not satisfy you. In contrast to the people of Jannah, whose every choice and every desire was satisfied. There we have what had وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِمَّا يَتَخَيَّرُونَ وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ. Their desires were fulfilled. Here, you will drink, but your thirst will not be quenched. فَشَارِبُونَ شُرْبَ الْهِيمِ, drinking like thirsty camels. And the camel here, obviously the camel drinks a lot, and then it stores the water. So using the example of the camel indicates that they will be drinking a lot of the water in vast quantities, but because it is boiling, it will simply eat up their insides and not be satisfying or nourishing. And then the Quran uses its irony. It says, هَذَا نُزُلُهُمْ يَوْمَ الدِّينِ. This is their welcome on the Day of Judgment. هَذَا نُزُلُهُمْ. This is their welcome. يَوْمَ الدِّينِ, on the Day of Judgment, on the Day of accountability. نُزُلُهُمْ is used also for the people of Jannah to indicate their rewards on the Day of Judgment, meaning this is their welcome. But here, it's used ironically. This is the kind of welcome they're going to get on the Day of Judgment. So there, the hospitality is not welcoming hospitality. The drink is not satisfying or cooling. The food is not satisfying. And shajarin min zaqum, this is the food, and this is mentioned in chapter 37, Surat Al-Safat, in more detail. And it says that its growth is like the heads of shayateen, كَأَنَّهُمْ رُؤُوسُ الشَّيَاطِينَ, like the heads of devils. So this is a horrific growth in Jahannam, which is highlighted. Here we are not told that, we are just told لَآكِلُونَ مِنْ شَجَرٍ مِنْ زَقُومٍ. So different parts of the Quran give you different glimpses into the same situation. Now from verse 57 onwards, we have a series of questions and a series of enumeration of God's blessings. So istifham, the use of questions, here helps to challenge the listener, to make you think. It's interactive. It asks you questions, and so it makes you think. And also there is enumeration of God's blessings. And also these are evidence of God's power of creation and God's power of destruction. So just as here we are told that the inevitable event will come to pass, that the Day of Judgment will come to pass, the destruction of the world will come to pass. So here we are told about different things which God has created, which He can also destroy. It is in His power also to destroy. And we see those as evidence of His power to destroy the entire universe when the time comes. And so we have these questions which begin at verse 57. نَحْنُ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ فَلَوْلَا تُصَدِّقُونَ. The first example here, the first example of creation is the creation of man himself. And here God is using, the Quran is using the divine plural of majesty. نَحْنُ. نَحْنُ means we. And this is the first word, نَحْنُ. Now it's not essential to have نَحْنُ in grammatic terms, because in Arabic grammar the verb has the concept of we inside it, but nahnu, the pronoun is added in order to create emphasis. So here, we it is who create. Nahnu khalaqnakum. Khalaqnakum means we create you. Nahnu khalaqnakum. It is we who create you. Nahnu khalaqnakum. فَلَوْلَا تُصَدِّقُونَ. So why don't you believe in the truth of this day of judgment? Why don't you believe in this? فَلَوْلَا تُصَدِّقُونَ. So this is a question. فَلَوْلَا. Why is it that you have trouble in believing in this resurrection? Since we have created you, why do you have trouble in believing that we will resurrect you? نَحْنُ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تُمْنُونَ. Now evidence is presented. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ. Have you seen? أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ. Have you seen? مَا تُمْنُونَ. What you emit, meaning the sperm that you emit, meaning that you are created from this drop of sperm. أَأَنْتُمْ تَخْلُقُونَهُ. Another question. Is it you? أَأَنْتُمْ تَخْلُقُونَهُ. Is it you that create this? أَمْ نَحْنُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Or are we the creator? The royal majesty, the plural of majesty is you. Or are we the one who creates? خالق. Are we the creator of it? And then, again, as evidence of him being the creator, and as a proof of the day of judgment and his power to destroy what he has created, he says, نَحْنُ قَدَّرْنَا بَيْنَكُمُ الْمَوْتَ وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُوقِينَ. It is we it is, نَحْنُ, again, قَدَّرْنَا, who have decreed, بَيْنَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ, between you, death, al-maut, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُوقِينَ. We are not to be, no one is to precede us in this. No one is to frustrate our decree. So, maut, coupled with creation, indicates that what God has created, it is in God's power to destroy. Same with the universe. He has created it. He is the one who has the power to destroy it. نَحْنُ قَدَّرْنَا بَيْنَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ. Again, نَحْنُ, we are the one. And nobody is to interfere with God's will. فَعَّالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. The one who does whatever he wishes, as it says in another place in the Quran. أَلَا أَن نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ وَنُنْشِئَكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That we can نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ, exchange the likeness of you. وَنُنْشِئَكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And then initiate you in a form that you are unaware of. So we can change you into other forms. We can initiate a new form. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمُ النَّشْأَةَ الْأُولَى فَلَوْلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. And you are well aware. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُم. You are very well aware. النَّشْأَةَ الْأُولَى, of your first creation. فَلَوْلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. So why don't you think about that? Why don't you reflect on that? Why are you not admonished by that? God has created you. You didn't come about from nothing. So why do you deny that he has the power to resurrect you, to recreate you? And again, these are searching questions. فَلَوْلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Why do you not receive admonishment from this? Why do you not take heed? Another question. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. Have you seen what you sow into the ground, the seeds that you plant in the earth? أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ. Have you seen? So again, the Quran is appealing to the senses here, appealing to sight. Look, have you seen it with your own eyes, that you put seeds into the ground and then they grow? You've seen it with your own eyes. You've seen that from semen comes forth humans. You've seen that by planting seeds in the ground, plants come forth. All of this is God's creative power. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ الزَّارِعُونَ. Are you the one who causes it to grow? أَمْ نَحْنُ الزَّارِعُونَ. Or are we the grower of it? لَوْ نَشَاءُ. If we had willed, لَجَعَلْنَاهُ خُطَامًا. We could have turned it to chaff. فَظَلْتُمْ تَفَكَّهُونَ. And you would have been left lamenting and regretful, saying, what has happened? So the fact that sometimes a farmer plants his crops and he waits until the season of harvest, and then a wind comes or locusts come and everything is turned to chaff before he has the chance to harvest. This is dalil that it's not in your control. Even though you planted the seed, if you were the one who grew it, you would harvest it. You wouldn't give it up. You wouldn't surrender your effort. But the one who gifted that to you has the power to take it away. So again, you see how all of these gifts, the Quran is also pointing out the divine power to take it away. That he creates life, but he also decrees maut. Nobody can avert that. He allows you to plant seeds and enjoy plant growth, but he can also turn it into chaff. Then you would say, Inna la mughramun. We are now burdened. We have no yield from our investment. Bal nahnu mahrumun. We have been deprived of its blessings. And then he says, verse 68, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْمَاءَ الَّذِي تَشْرَبُونَ. Have you seen the water which you drink? Again, another question. أَفَرَأَيْتُم. Have you seen? So have you seen this pattern now? أَفَرَأَيْتُم, أَفَرَأَيْتُم, أَفَرَأَيْتُم. The same pattern again and again. Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen? Forcing you again and again to think, to think, to think, and to use your eyes, to use your senses. Look at the wonders of nature. See that God creates and see that God destroys. And understand that the day of judgment is inevitable. Al-Waqi'ah. Inna la mughramun bal nahnu mahrumun. Afara'aytum al-ma'a alladhi tashrabun. Have you seen the water which you drink? Antum anzaltumuhu min al-muzn. Are you the one who sends it down from the clouds? Is it you who does that? Am nahnu al-munzilun. Or are we the one who sends it down? Now his destructive power here. He says, لَوْ نَشَاءُ. If we had willed, لَجَعَلْنَاهُ أُجَاجًا فَلَوْلَا تَشْكُرُونَ. We could make it salty. Salt water would poison you. You don't drink seawater. You need fresh water. So he sends down fresh water for you from the sky. Even though the seas are full of salt water, but he knows you can't drink it. He sends down fresh water from the sky. لَوْ نَشَاءُ جَعَلْنَاهُ أُجَاجًا. He could make it salty and you wouldn't be able to drink it. فَلَوْلَا تَشْكُرُونَ. So why don't you give thanks to the one who provides water for you according to your needs? فَلَوْلَا تَشْكُرُونَ. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ النَّارَ الَّتِي تُورُونَ. Have you seen the fire which you kindle from wood? أَأَنْتُمْ أَنْشَأْتُمْ شَجَرَتَهَا أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنْشِئُونَ. Are you the one who creates the trees from which you kindle this fire? أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنْشِئُونَ. Or are we the one who gives the growth to these trees? نَحْنُ جَعَلْنَاهَا تَذْكِرَةً وَمَتَاعًا لِلْمُقْوِينَ. We have made this a reminder and a provision for the travelers in the desert. People who are traveling, they rely on these things, the rain which comes from the sky and the kindling of fire, etc. In our comfortable homes, we have central heating and so on. We don't appreciate all these things, but the traveler in the wilderness appreciates what great gifts these are that God has provided. He says, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. So glorify the name of your Lord most high, most magnificent. This is verse 74. Now the final verse of the surah, verse 96, repeats this, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. So this is twice in this surah, indicating God's supreme glory. And after the enumeration of his favors here, he says, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. Since God is the one who creates all of these blessings which you rely on, and God is the one who has the power to take them away, then it is only God who you should glorify. فَسَبِّحْ. This is fa. So therefore, فَسَبِّحْ, then you should glorify only God. And you should recognize His majesty. He is the creator. He is the one who destroys. And then, after describing the moment of death, in the final section, he says, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. Again, if you acknowledge that you have no control over the moment of death, then فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. It is God you should glorify, the one who gives and the one who takes away life of all forms. It is only God to whom all of this should be attributed, and He is above, He is pure of anything they associate with Him, any partners they associate with Him, any partners to whom they give creative power or destructive power. He is pure of all of that. He is the only one who is worthy of being glorified, being given credit for all of this creation and this destruction. So after this, then we have now a section, verses 75 to 82, which deals with the Quran. The Quran being the revelation which the disbelievers have denied. And so the Quran now forces them to reflect on this Quran, how much of a blessing this is for them, and how they should not be heedless to it. It says, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. No, I swear, أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ, by the position of the stars. وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. In case you don't understand, this is a qasam, an oath, a great oath. لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ, if you only knew. عَظِيم, a great oath, if you only knew. Now here, an oath is taken for emphasis, supreme emphasis. So this is where somebody wants you to really listen to what you are saying, and also to completely refute any argument to the contrary. So he says, I'm swearing. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ. So he said, أُقْسِمُ. Now, often in the Quran, there are particles which are used for qasam, like وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونَ. Wa is a particle of qasam. But here, Allah Ta'ala says, I swear, uqsimu. He spells it out. It's not a particle. He uses the verb, uqsimu, I swear. Uqsimu. Bimawaqi'in nujum. By the positioning of the stars. And then he uses tawqid, inna and lam of tawqid. Wa innahu la. This is surely, tawqid, emphasis here. La qasamun, an oath, law ta'lamuna azim. If you only knew, which is very great. Normally, the Quran uses oaths, and it is sufficient emphasis for the point being made. But here, he takes an oath, he uses the verb uqsimu, and then he says, and if you only knew, this is a great oath. This is very unusual. This is high levels of emphasis here that are being stressed, that you should really take heed of this oath. This is not an oath which is being sworn in vain. There's more levels of emphasis going beyond oath here. It says, innahu laqur'anun kareem. Again, inna of tawqid, lam of tawqid, again repeated. Innahu laqur'anun kareem. This is surely a most noble, honorable Quran. Fi kitabin maknoon. In a book which is well preserved. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. No one can touch it except the pure angels. And from this, the fuqaha derived the ruling that people should be in a state of cleanliness and wudu when they touch the Quran that we recite also. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. Tanzilun min rabbil alameen. Tanzil. It is something which comes down from above. It's very elevated and honored. It is tanzil. It comes down to you. You are blessed that you are on the earth. But through this Prophet ﷺ, through the angel Jibreel ﷺ, tanzil. This Quran which is in the heavens, this comes down to you. Tanzil. This is something which is from a higher place. But because of the blessing of the Prophet ﷺ being amongst you, this tanzil comes down to you. Tanzilun min rabbil alameen, from the Lord of the worlds. This is not a small thing. Min rabbil alameen. أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَنْتُمْ مُدْهِنُونَ. So is it that you are going to be heedless of a reminder like this, a bayan like this? Now all of this emphasis, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. And then you have these words, عظيم, كريم, مكنون, مطهرون, رب العالمين. All of these are indicating the greatness of the Quran, that it is azim. That you, first of all, nujum, the oath is by nujum, the stars. Then it is, the qasam itself is azim. Then the Quran itself is kareem. Then it is in a book which is maknoon, preserved. And the ones who touch it are mutahharun. And it is tanzil from Rabbil Alameen. All of these indicate the greatness of the Quran. And then after that, Allah Ta'ala says, أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ. This bayan, this hadith, this, the like of this, meaning all of these words which have given you a sense of the grandeur of this revelation, the like of this, so preserved, so elevated, so pure, so distinguished from a Lord who is the Lord of the worlds, with an oath which is taken by the stars in the celestial heavens. All of this, the like of this, أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَنْتُمْ مُدْهِنُونَ. You're not going to take heed of the like of this? So the blessing of the Quran is highlighted emphatically in this section of the Quran. And again we have a question. أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَنْتُمْ, addressing you directly, addressing the disbelievers. أَنْتُمْ مُدْهِنُونَ. You are going to remain heedless of this? أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ, of the like of this? So question and direct address again. هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ. And then in the final section, in the few minutes we have remaining of the hour, then the Quran now talks about the moment of death. So in verse 83, فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ. So okay, if you say that you are not subject to someone's control, if you deny that you are in the control of God, you don't think God is the creator, you don't think God is the one who has power of recreation, and you don't think God can take away everything you have, then فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ. Then why not when the soul reaches the throat? Now it's as if God the creator is seizing his creation now by the throat. We have here now the coronavirus, the virus which is seizing people by the throat. And this is really, these verses, sometimes we read them at other times, but in a certain reality, it comes to life. There's a moment when this really strikes home. He said, when the soul reaches the throat, you can't breathe. The soul is stuck in the throat, and then the soul is taken out. You're gasping for breath. Like your life hangs in the balance. Literally, your soul is there and you are seized by the throat. Life hangs in the balance. نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah says we are nearer to him than his jugular vein. Jugular vein indicating that life is in this throat, in this neck. So فَلَوْلَا, and look how delicate the neck is. We have the trunk of the body, and we have this head which contains the brain, and in between we have this delicate channel. And there, if there is a breakage, then life ends. فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُونَ. Now here, again, he's directly addressing the people. وَأَنْتُمْ, and you, حِينَئِذٍ, at that moment, تَنْظُرُونَ, are looking on. So here, again, he's appealing to the sight. Look, you see different aspects of creation, don't you? I've asked you questions about those. Do you have the power over those things? Is it you who does that? Can you stop those things from being terminated or changed? He says, just the same, look at life. Look at your own life. This is the climax of the argument. Look at your own lives. Look at the moment of death. You are looking on. تَنْظُرُونَ. You are looking at the person dying. You are looking at them die. And وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And we are nearer to him than you, but you can't see that. فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ. If you think you are not in the control of a higher being, تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Then put his soul back. Ha is a feminine proposition meaning his soul, his nafs. Put it back. تَرْجِعُونَهَا. Put it back into him. إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you are truthful. The Quran sometimes uses these irrefutable arguments. It's dumbfounding. Some points that the Quran makes which leave people speechless. And they did. It left them speechless, as if they just couldn't respond. The Quran mentions, for example, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said to Namrud that my Lord controls life and death. So Namrud took a person and he gave one, liberated someone who was destined to death, and he took another person and he killed them and said, look, I control life and death. So then Ibrahim alayhi salam said, look, my Lord makes the sun rise in the east and set in the west. Can you reverse it? He was dumbfounded. So sometimes the Quran mentions these things which leave the person unable to respond and forced to reflect. So here the Quran says, look, if you don't believe in my power of creation, my power of destruction, my power of resurrection, look at the person as he is dying. You are standing there watching. You are absolutely powerless to give him his life back. It is God who gives life. It is God who takes life away. It is God who has the power to resurrect. And then the three categories are mentioned again in this final part of the surah. So go back to the beginning, that the surah talks about this classification and these three categories. But here we are told that the Quran highlights that this classification begins from the moment of death. In this earth, you have your earthly social status and your earthly wealth and material things. But from the moment of death, the classification of the akhirah will begin. That will put an end to your worldly life, and in the grave and on the day of judgment, the classification will be different. Your fortunes will change. فَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. As for those who are in the muqarrabeen, and this time they come first, because there's no lengthy exposition here, they're just a short point, so they come first. فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٌ. They will have rawh, comfort, peace, rayhan, fragrant flowers or fragrant blooms, وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٌ. They will have gardens of delight. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. If they are from the people of the right, فَسَلَامٌ لَكَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. It will be said, سَلَامٌ لَكَ. Peace be upon you, مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. سَلَامٌ لَكَ, meaning on you. So meaning that the person, as they are dying, will hear this, لَكَ. He will be addressed directly. Now either this is by other believers who have preceded, or by the angels, or by God himself. فَسَلَامٌ لَكَ. Then it will be said to him, سَلَامٌ لَكَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. This will be, peace will be given from the Ashabul Yamin. Other believers will send their salam upon him. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. As for if he is from the ones who used to deny and who were astray, مُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ, فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ. Then what he will be given is hamim, boiling water. وَتَصْلِيَةُ جَحِيمٍ. And he will be thrust into the blazing fire. So his adhab will begin, and the grave will be give him already the experience of heaven or hell for the dying person. So this classification is spelled out. Then, إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينَ. So tawqeed again, inna and la. إِنَّ هَذَا, surely this, لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينَ. This Quran, this evidence, this argument, all of this is حَقُّ الْيَقِينَ, absolute truth. undeniable, irrefutable truth. Haqqul yaqeen, and the commentators of the Quran said this is the highest level of irrefutable truth. Meaning there are some things which you speculate, you have speculative proofs, you have different levels of yaqeen, different levels of certainty. But this is haqqul yaqeen, this is al-Waqi'ah, this is inevitable, this is undeniable, irrefutable. Inna hadha lahu haqqul yaqeen. Death will surely come to pass. And after death will become the process of reward and punishment and resurrection. فَسَبِّحْ بِسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. So glorify the name of your Lord, most great, most high. So this surah, highlighting the inevitability of the Day of Judgment, the separation of classes of people into their various groups, targheeb for the people, motivation for the people who are suffering here, that they will have rewards in the hereafter. Tarheeb for the people who are self-satisfied with their situation here, that their luxury will not last forever, and they had better take heed to this tremendous blessing of the Quran which they have been sent, which is Tanzilum min Rabbil Alameen, sent down by the Lord of the worlds. And these various searching arguments with their probing questions, interactive questions of God's creative power, God's power to destroy and take away, and all of this as an argument for God's power of resurrection. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to study and to learn and to act upon the Quran and to come closer to it in this month of Ramadan, this time when the Quran was revealed to the Muslims. And may Allah Ta'ala give us istiqamah upon the Surat al-Mustaqim. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.